Welcome to today's presentation called What's New Advanced Design 2025.1. Today I will introduce the latest update of Advanced Design. But before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Mateusz Budziński. I'm a product line manager for structural analysis software at GRAITEC. I graduated from the Faculty of Civil Engineering at the Krakow University of Technology in Poland with a specialization of numerical computing methods, and gained my experience as a support engineer and then as a product manager and research and development team at Robot. And then after GRAITEC acquisition, I gradually became more involved in advanced design development management. And now I'm responsible for planning and managing the development of analysis software within the group, especially advanced design. In today's presentation, I divided it into 5 parts. First, I will mention what's new on advanced design, then on what's new on RC design modules and what's new on steel connection module. Then I will focus on some novelties from GRAITEC Advantage self-care portal. At the end, I will mention some plans for the next 3 years for advanced design. Let's start with advanced design. Before I start, a small explanation. This update doesn't bring some big component or big functionality, as it was planned as an update that focuses on improving the daily work, providing some improvements and by fixing bugs. We also already started preparing the new functionalities to the 2026 release, as we have very ambitious plans and we want to provide several big new features on the spring-fall 2026 release. But even such smaller improvements provided by this release are nice, I hope, and helpful, so let me present such. I will start with a new option that will make easier viewing of graphical results by displaying only one extreme value for the entire element. For this, in the graphical results settings, there is a new option called one extreme value per element. It allows for displaying only one extreme value on diagrams, which is placed on the middle point of element. We can choose to present the minimum, maximum, or absolute maximum value. This way of presenting of values is helpful for quick identification of extreme values, also for preparing views for reports. And on the next slide, I show quick 3 simple examples. So on the left, you see diagrams with the description of the actual forces in linear elements. As a result of the division of beams into smaller finite elements, it's an effect of concrete beam and slab integration. Many value descriptions are presented by default. It's because we had a lot of nodes along that beams. And when activating new option, we can see only one extreme value. In the middle picture, we see the map with bending moments of surface elements. And again, for each separate surface element, we can see just one extreme value there. And on the right, we see the example where this new option is especially useful. So when presenting working ratio from design verifications, so it lets us instantly check the maximum ratio when we activate this option, because it's only one extreme value for the element. The next point is also related to RC design. In fact, to improve the accuracy of internal forces diagrams that are used for the design of reinforcement concrete beams, particularly when we're using the RIP option, improvements are made to the process of integrating of forces from surface elements. The problem was that when someone modeled a slab with large finite elements when taking internal forces from the slab to the beam to get forces for rebar calculation. The graph contained average values from the large finite elements. One of the results is the stepped appearance of the graphs, but it's not most important. What is more important is that, especially for the transverse forces, the average values were smaller than the real ones. Of course, for small finite elements, this problem is no longer the case. That's why we made changes. And a key improvement is the increase in the number of cross sections used in force integration, alongside the use of the values from the finite element edges. So this improvement reduces the impact of mesh density of the forces we get for design calculations for beams modeled as rigs. You can also see that diagrams are smoother, so and especially the values that are used for design are more accurate, especially when we compare to the 2025 version. The next point is a possibility of generating reports using native DocX technology when it comes to the timber shape sheet. So the ability to generate reports using this technology was introduced in the version 2025, but this did not apply to reports from the design timber and steel and timber elements. So it's not only for steel, timber, also for steel. And now it's available, and this allows us to generate detailed shape sheets to be generated directly in Microsoft Word. This allows us to generate the entire report without using RTF format, which, in addition to other advantages, will also enable other future improvements to verification shapesheet reports, like better quality of equation, for example. And the next improvement is also related to shapesheets. In the latest version of Advanced Design, we made improvements to the shapesheets dialog for timber elements analysis according to Unicode, as well to the associated reports. These changes improve the reliability and quality of presented results. In short, changes include unification and improvements of the designations, improve the display of mathematical formulas, consistent font usage, and in general better formatting. Additionally, most formulas are displayed not only with symbols but also with numerical values. In case DocX reports, so generated using DocX component, as I mentioned previously, equations are now generated using Microsoft equation format, additionally improving clarity and precision and the quality, in fact, of equations. And this is a small improvement also related to reports by, in fact, to all detailed reports with shape sheets for steel and timber. Now we have, in fact, previously we had users had informed us that there have been comments from verifying the calculations that it's not clear according to which standard or national annex to the Eurocode the calculations were carried out. That's why a new line has been added at the beginning of the sheet, which contains the name of the standard used and, in case Eurocode, also the national annex. So there will be no doubts about the source of rules when someone is checking the documentation. Now I will tell a little bit more about novelties to RC design modules. I will start with RC drawings. So when generating drawings, there are now more options to control the rebar annotations. In fact, in general, in addition to bar marks, annotation can include details like the number of bars, diameter, and length. So we can adapt with long annotations with that, which that are generated on the annotation line, which in some cases affects the drawing clarity. So that's why on drawing settings we have now new options. One is horizontal annotation and the second horizontal annotation type. So you can set the annotation directions to horizontal or along the horizontal annotation line. With new options, finally we have three ways of presenting river annotations, as on pictures below. So the default when annotations are generated along the line, the second when we see only horizontal text, and the third is the case when the annotation line is a horizontal part. The next novelty is also related to drawings for RC modules, or rather to using drawings on the documentation. Now, from end of RC module, it means it could be RC beam, RC column, or footing. You can generate a PDF document with drawings of multiple selected elements. So we can select several elements, several files, and generate drawings together for all that files. This feature is available for beams, columns, foundations, and for walls, and can be accessed through the perform batch calculation window. We can generate documents in A3 or A4 formats and in the landscape or portrait layout. Of course, the process can be combined with other batch operations or run independently. The resulting PDF includes raster images, pictures of the drawings, one drawing per page, and additionally there is a page with the table of contents and the page with a summary of materials, some short bill of materials. The next point is related to the RC footing module. Now we can define varying soil levels across different parts of a footing and apply separate loads to each section. For these, new options are available on the soil layer definition dialog, where we can now select uneven soil distribution. We can select one of 12 scenarios for footing foundations when the ground level and the basement level is different on the different areas of the footing. In addition, when defining loads, you can also define different surface loads on both levels, so you can easily model the different loads coming from the basement slab and other additional layers. So this feature accounts for uneven ground levels and of course varying surface loads, and helps to more accurately model stress distribution and of course avoid potential foundation rotation because it's possible in that cases. We stay on the RC footing module. With this update, we introduced an additional soil bearing verification for serviceability limit state combinations. When calculations are made according to North American standards, means Canadian or American standard, this option can be activated in the design assumption window and can enter the bearing capacity value separately for ultimate and service limit states. The process for SLS verification is similar to ULS, but uses, of course, different bearing capacity, uses different factors to foundation and soil weight, and of course is performed only for service load combinations. During the analysis, the most critical combination, whether it's from ULS or SLS, is selected and is displayed in the info panel as a critical one. And of course, in the report, you can find some additional details for that. Next is a small improvement to RC column module. When calculating reinforcement for columns, different combinations may be decisive for the longitudinal reinforcement in the X and Y directions. Previously, only one combination name was displayed in the info panel window, and now there are two scenarios. A single combination name is shown if it's decisive for both directions, or two combination names are displayed if different combinations are decisive for each reinforcement direction. So we see that case on the picture. And now I will focus on the steel connection module. The first point is related to the welded truss connections, in fact, to drawings. So we introduced several improvements for welded truss connection drawings. In particular, there's a new top view. So it's providing a horizontal perspective and showing the position of horizontal plate and also, of course, diagonals. In addition, bar clipping has been implemented to shorten the ends of cords. We also can see the dimension of plates if were used, of course, and to show the placement of sections, new section symbols are added on the drawing. So drawings for welded truss connections are much better with this update. The next point is related to the verification of bolts bearing pressure for several connection types like clip angles connections, splice, gasket, or shear plate joint. This verification has been expanded to include pressure on the webs of beams, primary or secondary beams. This addresses the scenarios when bolts are subjected to vertical shear forces and causes pressure on webs of beams. Previously, bolt bearing pressure analysis focused on the clip angle or shape plate. Now it incorporates also the web beams as well. This check can be decisive in some scenarios, especially for a single row of bolts, as we see on the screen, with no or small bending, but with significant shear forces. This improvement modifies only the calculation engine without the changes to report, so there is no separate point in the report for that. The next point is an improvement to the tubular base plate connection. Now, the base plate is also verified for cases where only tensile force acts on the column, so when the column is uplifted. This new base plate intention verification applies to all tubular base plate configurations, so when the plate is circular or the rectangular, and also for all supported column sections means rectangular, square, or circular hollow section. This check is in fact performed when at least one anchor is loaded on the intention. For this check, an updated T-step algorithm is used that calculates the effective width for tension. The full process, the verification process, checks the connections along the both X and Y axis, and of course, at the end, selecting the critical value from all checks. We see a part of the report, because of course, the report now includes expanded details of the T-stub, but also that new part related to the tensile resistance of the base plate. In fact, that's all in regard to the improvements in this release. Of course, I haven't mentioned many small points as well as many fixes of various problems to advanced design on to design modules. it's clear that we include a lot of fixes. But now I wanted to share some news not directly related to advanced design, but to the GRAITEC Advantage website. Uh, as far as I know, there will be a separate webinar on various changes in GRAITEC Advantage website, where some news related, for example, to the handling of orders and handling of licenses will be discussed. But I want to mention shortly just two other planned updates of GRAITEC Advantage self-portal. The first change, as on the screen, is related to the technical articles, including articles on advanced design, which will soon appear on the site. In fact, it will be the same list of articles that were available in the previous version of the portal. They may still contain some images with the old program interface. The articles are not updated itself, but in many cases, they will be useful for searching for additional technical information. So we will be able to filter articles and find many details. The second change concerns the display of new sections dedicated to the presentation of upcoming development plans. So upcoming software development plans for GRAITEC main software. For this purpose, there will be a dedicated page for each major software, which with a description of the main functionalities. That proposals will be divided into some parts like the status, with status that is released or is in work, or it's planned or under consideration. What is important, everyone will be able to vote and leave comments to each of existing proposals, but also you will be able to submit directly your proposals and ideas. So we want this site allows us to communicate with you in more interactive way. I'm not sure now 100% when both above changes to the GRAITEC Advantage website will be available, but it's rather the matter of weeks or even days, not months, I believe. Since I mentioned plans, now briefly about what we are planning for the next year for advanced design. But before I start, an important note, the list of plans I will present is not a promise. It's not a promise that will give that given novelties will appear in the next version, because for various reasons, in the coming months we may modify the list, we may postpone some items to the later date. Of course, we can also add other points. So that's important note. I will start with the really big novelty. It's a composite beam. Composite means, what does it mean? We will be able to model steel beam with the concrete part above. So the concrete, it could be a composite deck, composite made of steel corrugated slab and sheet and the concrete slab, and of course it's connected through the studs with the beam. So we will be able to model that kind of composite beams. We will be able to calculate, to do the design calculation according to Eurocode and also according to the American code. So that will be a really big new, we call it expert, so it's a functionality for design elements. The next point is pile foundation. So what does it mean? The plan is that you will be able to model the foundation made of piles. So no matter if it's a single pile or it's a set of piles under some pile caps, so we'll be able to model that foundation, and of course we'll calculate relative spring supports for that type of the foundation. Another improvement is related to the American code for the load, define the loads. So we'll update to the new version It means we'll update the definition of combinations, defining climatic and seismic loads. And of course, all that loads will be according to the current version of this code. The next point is also really big functionality. It's a major change of the defining and calculating shell elements. It's to we will be able to model layered shells. What does it mean, layered shells? There are shells, the planar elements, in fact, surface elements that are made of layered sections. So the section can be made from different layers of materials. Of course, the most popular, typical is cross-laminated timber, but in fact it can be any. So we'll be able to model and do the final element calculation for that elements. And that is related, as I mentioned, the timber cross-laminated panels will be able also do the verification, code verification for that panels. Of course, first we need to model them as a layered shell, do the final element calculation, and then we'll be able to check that CLT panels. Another improvement for the North America, it's as you know, we have a steel connection module that allows us to the design verification for steel connection according to Eurocode, and we want to expand this module also for North American codes. We'll start with two first connection types. So the work is started, so I'm sure we'll have it for the next release. We start with endpoint connection and shear connection. Another smaller but also important improvements will be related to reports. It's a quick preview of parts of reports. It means if someone is preparing the content of the reports with many tables, parts, there will be an option to easily do a preview of the part of that report. Also, we'll start the update of Eurocodes. As you know, new Eurocodes are coming, new version of the Eurocodes. Some are already published. Most of them will be published during this and next year. So we'll start next year updating advanced design with new Eurocodes. We'll start for sure with steel and concrete parts, but not only. I believe most of the changes will be done for the 26.1 version, but we'll see, because as I said, the new Eurocodes are published, not all are available yet, and we will introduce them one by one, starting with the next year. Of course, details on that points will be shared with you later. And of course, we'll provide many other improvements. I wanted to keep only one slide for plans for the next year, but our plans are really extended. We have many points on the list. We want to improve the user interface on some points. For modules, for example, just an example, we want to introduce possibility for doing the reinforcement of RC foundation using fabrics, and many other points. As I said, the above list is not covering all plans. For the other site, we might be forced to postpone some of the above points. Anyway, that's the overview of the next release. That's all for today. You will be able to find more details in what's new document, which will be available with the setup of the new version soon. From my side, that's all. Thank you for your attention today. If anyone has questions, please enter them in the chat. I will do my best to answer them. Thank you and have a good day.